My traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies, the dawn is breaking on the stage that holds our final destiny. And so, my traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies, the show must go on. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about what we know as and what we call aliens and UFOs. I'm not sure what needs to come out about that, but I had a particular dream experience last night, and I knew that one of the reads at least that had to come out today, let's wait, Das is being important. Oh, okay. One of the reads that needed to come out today was attached to that particular subject matter. I don't know what it is. And when I say what we know as and what we call aliens and UFOs, I don't think there's any problem with calling an alien or a UFO. However, well, apparently Jesus has something to say about this too. Amazing. Jesus is vibing with the beings, okay? So when I say it that way, it's because the only reason why, in my opinion, and other people's opinions too, this isn't a new concept, but it's not, okay, but please don't knock Jesus off Das's work is done. What I want to say about that before I go on with what I was just saying, whatever beings that I'm talking about, these particular aliens, and these particular UFOs do apparently have a lot to say through Jesus, okay? They are aligned with Jesus. If we're talking about ascended masters and things like that, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Now, this has a biblical context, I know. We're talking about people who do not know the way, okay? Like, Jesus came to help with that for people who were lost, like off their own path, off their own authenticity. And back in the day, we were calling that being one with God, okay? Like this archaic language that we can still use. If that's the language you prefer, it's fine. But the Son of Man came to seek, came to look for and save the lost. But what this has to do with in this context, what Jesus is saying to us here is the Son of Man, people like Jesus as well. But I mean, like, technically, if you're looking at Jesus as a symbol to the path of enlightenment, the enlightened beings, the path that all of humanity tends to be on in general. We are seeking to save the lost. So those are lost aspects of ourselves, but this also has to do with seeking out the unseen beings, the things that have been lost to us through disasters of time, through genocide, like when we're talking about the First Nations people, through violence, through horrible tragedies that were largely due, and I know it's trivializing a lot of stuff, human ignorance. A lot of actions that were performed like in deep ignorance and violence separated us, not only from ourselves, because you can't do violent acts like that and not tear yourself apart in some way. So we separated ourselves from ourselves, we separated ourselves from other people, and we also separated ourselves from the wider community of beings. Okay, so that is what this means in this context, and it's opening the read. The Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. We are reclaiming lost knowledge. We are reclaiming lost perceptions and awareness, and in doing so, we are reclaiming our lost communities. Communities among the human race and communities among the non-human races. That was already a thing in the past, we lost it due to ignorant behaviors, likely not only from human beings, but other beings as well. Because just because something's a non-human being does not mean it is benevolent or intelligent or better than you. Okay, so you got to be particular about your beings. And so what I was going to say about calling something an alien or a non-human being, We're only experiencing aliens and UFOs as aliens and UFOs because we have a certain perception and awareness. When our perception and awareness expands, we would no longer be experiencing UFOs and aliens or angels and demons. We would be experiencing something else entirely. And that does not mean that aliens and UFOs aren't a thing. It is just not all that they are. So getting very attached to that particular form and those particular narratives tends to be a mistake, because once you have an expansion of consciousness, you're not going to see that anymore, unless it is something that you prefer. Because I'm not Christian or whatever, but I tend to prefer a lot of the Christian mysteries, but I'm not like literally attached to them, is what I'm saying. So the easiest way to sort of explain this, if you still don't know what I'm talking about, which probably you do because the collective tends to be just very advanced and everything else. But if you don't. So you are seeing, well, what you're actually seeing is a recording of me. My traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies. I would like to call your attention to the fact that you are watching something pre-recorded. I would like to call your attention to the fact that this is a deck of cards. Okay? But despite this being something pre-recorded, I guarantee you I am a real person. I guarantee you I am a real person in an actual location. Trust me, bro. I am real. But if you saw me in real life, this is approximately what you would see. Potentially, because right now what you are seeing is what I am presenting to you. You have no idea if I'm being super calculated about what I am curating on my feed or not. You're kind of just going with Allison's kind of a feral mess, and probably she is who she is. And that's true, I am who I am, but if you think that I'm just wandering around like in real life, just talking like this automatically about the subjects that I talk about online, that's not the case, because I don't want to upset anyone who's not like prepared. Like, we got to do the small talk and whatever. But if you saw me in real life, like depending on the camera angles that I'm using or whatever, I'm a very short person, you would be seeing not what you see on the camera, right? Your experience of me in real life would be different than your experience of seeing me posting something on YouTube or any form of social media. And that's normal. So you would have a particular experience of me in real life. So let's say you did meet me in real life. I am Allison. Yes, I have this body and whatever. This is how I look in in 3 dimensions. This is how I look in 3 dimensions plus the 4th dimension of time. So you're seeing me moving through the 4 dimensions right here. Okay. If you had actual perceptions, like physical perceptions that were aligned with the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, 7th, 8th, 9th, a millionth dimension, okay? If your senses and perceptions aligned with another dimension entirely, you would not be perceiving me as this. You would not be perceiving me in this body. I would look entirely different. I wouldn't look like this. Is it still me? Yes, it is. Is this version of me real and true? Yes, it is. But is it the only version of me? Of course not. So that's what I mean by aliens and UFOs. Are aliens and UFOs real? In my opinion, yes. But it is way more describing an experience than it is a literal thing, a literal alien. Like when we start getting into when people start getting into like the Galactic Federation narratives and all of that. And I really I'll make an entirely other video of why I would suggest caution around those sorts of narratives, especially around aliens and stuff like that, because in my opinion, a lot of that is actually actively harmful. it's like designed to be harmful. And it's not that everybody who's participating in that is harmful. There are a lot of people participating in it who like just actually don't know. They don't know. And I would also say to you that if deep down in your authenticity, you know that you are supposed to be channeling messages from Ashtar Command, it is not for me to tell you that that's bad for you to do and you should stop. I cannot tell you that. So I can only tell you my opinion about why I would exercise caution with that, but not in this video, okay? Because it's not like drastically important. Almost nothing is freaking drastically important and that you need to hear it now, okay? So that's my little spiel about like the reality of aliens and UFOs and the beings. And then also, before we get into this read, something that I would like to briefly talk about is that I have had, I call it the alien abduction experience, because yes, alien abduction is a real experience. Is that a literal thing? Are there literal aliens like in a literal UFO abducting people and doing experimentation on them? No, that process is not literal. It is real though. There is something really going on there, but what you are experiencing in the moment is only what you are able to experience based on your senses and on your current perception and awareness. If you had a different perception and awareness senses, you would not be having that version of the experience, is what I'm saying, if we can all like follow each other there. But is it real? Yes, it is real. So I am someone who has had a particular version of the alien abduction experience since like birth. My first memories are not of people, they are of aliens. And the thing is, until like very like recently, when I started getting into all of this and like learning way more about it from various sources, at the time that I was growing up, there was lots of talk about like grays. And there was a lot of narratives about aliens and about the abduction experience that was very dark. Like a lot of stuff that was going on like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s almost. Like the 90s is where it was kind of ending. But in that time period, there was a lot of like really predominantly like nastier stuff going on with the abduction experience that I never had. So my abduction experiences never involved like really invasive, horrible, non-consensual surgeries or stuff that really like mimics like SA and things like that. Like there was never anything going on with like my reproductive system or anything like that. I have had the experience of meeting like a hybrid child, which that was weird. But like I'm telling you, like people latch on to what they are experiencing literally. And that's where these narratives about like breeding program conspiracies, like stuff like the government knows all about it. I really think that if you are someone who's very plugged into that, it might be worth putting aside. I do not know how helpful that is, and I believe a lot of those narratives are harmful. However, we can't discount it because there was obviously something going on within that time period to people with that experience that was like not good, not some, like that was bad news. To me, bad news all around. I don't know what that is, and people do still have those experiences, though they seem to me, it doesn't seem to be the trend on experiences anymore. And that's really what is to me most important about like alien abduction narratives. It's not really so much about one person's experiences. It's way more about trends in the experiences as a whole. That's the important thing to kind of look at and talk about, not just one person's like saying something about aliens or whatever. So for me, my experiences, like I was very confused, like kind of growing up, and also somewhat as an adult when I was contending with this, because there were periods of my life where I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to ignore all of this because it's insane and I don't want to deal with it. Because most people don't want to acknowledge that that's going on, because they just think that they're like super mentally ill, or like, I don't know, it's like a big old ordeal within like consensus reality. I know. So when I was growing up, because I had the experience growing up like pre-internet, okay, there just simply wasn't as much access to information. So you were only getting specific narratives about aliens, and a lot of it was very, very dark timeline stuff. Very dark timeline stuff, and everything was kind of being referred to as grays at a certain point. Like, if you were deeply embedded into the subcultures, I don't think that that was the case. But for me, obviously, as a child, like, I had no hope in hell of like delving into those subcultures very deeply, because that was all analog at the time. Like, you actually had to know people. And you know, children aren't like, that's all adults doing that. Like, they're not going to incorporate children. It's inappropriate. So there was that. So to me, it was just like all aliens, like the little small ones, okay? All of those beings were grays, right? And so all of these narratives that I was hearing, I was just like, oh, well, that's not my experience of the grays at all. It wasn't until much later that I realized, like, I've never met a gray in my life. The aliens who were abducting me weren't grays. They are, they glow. They are glowing white beings, and they are connected to another type of being. So the small ones that I was encountering were the glowing white beings that have the big, like, black eyes. And they don't talk. It's all like telepathic stuff. But those beings aren't actually beings. And you'll hear that, like, about like the grays and stuff like that, like they're like robots or something like that. In my opinion, a lot of these small beings that are like the aliens in the UFOs, okay, because there's also stuff with beings of the earth, and like all of this gets very confusing. So I'm not talking about what we know of as folk, the little people, the good folk. I'm not talking about that. These are not that, okay? But like the size thing tends to like replicate fractally for some reason. When you're talking about, at least in my experience, the glowing white ones, okay, that are in spacecraft, UFOs, they're in some sort of aerial craft. Those little glowing white ones are some form of like servitor, but it's like, in our world, when like a magician creates a servitor, you can't, like, you're not seeing that. Like, if you, like, I can look at Dasa right there. She's right there. If I created a servitor, I could not see it like I see Dasa. I would be seeing it with my mind's eye, okay? Unless it was a very, very, very special circumstance. For these beings, they create servitors, and the servitors are just there, like in their reality, okay? They are able to do that because like it's not as dense as our reality, okay? So those little small ones tend to be servitors. They are there to perform specific roles and functions, and like those beings can just be destroyed. Like, that disturbed me because I saw one like just destroyed, and I like freaked out because I thought it was a real being. It's not a real, like, they'll destroy those like once they have like finished serving their purpose. And usually you're going to be encountering those beings until you get to a certain like level of perception and awareness, and then you're going to be encountering the other beings. So most of my life I was dealing, like, especially as a kid, I was dealing with the little small beings. And then I knew on the ships that like there were the small beings that are usually like attendants and keeping everything in order. Then there are the tall glowing white ones that are like actual beings. Those are actual beings, and they are doing some like the actual work. And so my experiences tended to be, I would be shown things either on screens, or sometimes it would start on a screen and then it's like they move you into like this holographic experience so that you are actual like experiencing like the thing that they're showing you as some form of reality, but it's a simulation, whatever, or it's something going on in another dimension. And then they would also perform like interviews. I would be interviewed a lot. They would ask me questions and things like that. And that's the extent of it. And growing up and through most of my adulthood, I was of the mindset, and I think this happens to a lot of people who start having their experiences very young. If you've been having these experiences since you were a child and it's very disorienting and it's scary and everything else, even if nothing like bad is happening, it's very scary. Your child mind tends to develop a relationship with these experiences and these beings as in you are not in control. This is something that just happens to you and you have no agency of it. And that's what makes it especially distressing, because your child mind is forming the notion that these beings are more powerful than you and that they can just do anything to you that they want and you can't do anything about it. That's not true. All you need to do to stop, like, you do not need to pay anyone for, like, forget the thing about the implants, okay? Like, anybody who's trying to say, oh, you got to pay me $1,000 to get rid of the alien implant, like, no. Fugazi, lies, please stop. Please stop. That's dark timeline stuff, okay? The only thing you need to do to stop the alien abduction experience from happening is to tell them to stop. If aliens are coming up to you, like when you're trying to sleep and things like that and monitoring you, if it is a glowing white being, the reason why they're doing that is actually it's like a protective thing. But they they don't have boundaries. It's because it's also not a real being. So they're just like in your face like that when you're trying to sleep. If you give those little servitor beings direct commands, they are under your control, is what I'm telling you. The reason why those things are with you is directly for your benefit. And so it was created by another being, but you actually have command over those beings. So if you want to tell it to back up or whatever, or don't do this or don't do that, it will obey you. It's a construct. And if it is with the glowing whites, that is going to respect your boundaries, okay? And also, the glowing whites, like, if you just tell them to stop, it is my experience that they will stop. The only thing is, once I told them to stop, what they did say is, okay, but if it's an emergency, if something is an emergency, we will still do this. And I was just like, okay, but like, and it's been years. Ever since I drew that boundary, I have not had the alien abduction experience again. I have had instances where something's been going on and they'll typically like try to alert me like through the dream state by appearing like in a craft or something, but they don't do any form of like the abduction experience. So I would just say that if you feel like you have no agency over your experiences, you absolutely do. And if ever you state a boundary with a being and that being does not respect your boundaries, then you need to get aggressive on that being. You need to start pulling out the ammunition, okay? That is not a being that should be in your space, as far as I'm concerned. If something non-consensual is happening to you, then that opens itself up to be destroyed utterly. That is when violence is in alignment. Nothing should be violating your consent and boundaries at all. So that opens to fair violence. But I have not had that experience. And then, I can't talk about that right now. There will come a time when I can talk, because the glowing whites are like attached to another form of being that is like bigger than them or like more important. But I've had limited experiences with those beings, because the reason why I got into the occult in the first place was to stop having experiences. And then when I got involved with the occult, I started having more experiences, more in-depth and intense experiences that weren't bad, but the point of me getting involved with magic was to stop that. So I went, well, I'm just having more, but however, the benefits of the more in-depth occult experience that I did have was that it facilitated a lot of understanding about the experiences I was having, my own history and my family's history. And as well, it was a contributing factor into me just stating the boundary and then feeling like a complete idiot because I realized I could have done that all this time. I was wearing the ruby slippers all this time. Unless, of course, you're dealing with more, malevolent beings, because, of course, that exists too. But if you are, I promise you, you can get rid of that, okay? And it doesn't cost any $1,000 either. So that is some of my experience in history. And so now the reason for this read is that I was kind of strafed in a dream last night. The dream that I was having was that I was on the way to the grocery store and I was buying fruit, right? And it was nighttime. And on my way to the grocery store, I looked up out of my car. Oh, I'm like getting like kind of happy about this, which is like weird because usually I have more fear experiences, even with that form of contact in a dream, which I'll explain why in later videos about aliens and UFOs in general, about why even if it's a good experience that it's normal to be afraid, to be experiencing fear. It's not a sign necessarily of a bad being. It's a sign that you are human, okay? But in this particular dream, I looked up and I saw like this big, it was a big UFO, like a big gray UFO. And I was like, oh, and you know, and it had lights and everything. And I was like, oh, it's them. Like, what are they doing here? That's amazing that I can see them. And I think the craft, I forget exactly what happened. It was like the craft came closer and I was sort of really happy about it. I was really anticipating like what I was like, oh, awesome, this is great. And then nothing really happened. But I do know that like what I can remember of this is that there were also like that kind of larger craft went away. And then there were like smaller crafts that like got closer, like smaller, like the range of sizes within, if you've ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there do tend to be like sizes and like those little ones that just look like glowing balls of energy. That's all a thing. And then also if you've ever seen like Batteries Not Included, those like little small, like that, it was that level. It wasn't like usually like the little energy ships, the ones that look like little orange balls of light or like red or yellow balls of light or blue, like they can be various colors, but those tend to be like the smallest types of like craft or conveyance, whatever that is. But there are like little small ones that are more like construct, like they look more mechanical, and these looked more mechanical. They didn't look exactly like the stuff from Batteries Not Included, but like those were the ones that ended up being like the closest to me. And nothing really happened in the dream besides like I was acknowledging it and going, hey, that's awesome. And then sort of I went to the grocery store and I got my groceries in the dream. And the thing is, this day I knew the first thing that I had to do was go to a couple of different grocery stores to get all my fruit and produce and stuff because we're getting ready to have an Arctic blast and I'm not going to want to leave my house while that's going on. And so I was just like, well, there is some sort of parallel going on there because after I do my groceries, I'm going to acknowledge these beings. And so now that we're almost 30 minutes in, that is what I'm going to do, but I have no idea what's happening here. I know they want to come out through the cat decks, which also seems like a friendlier thing. It's sort of like it's establishing that like we promise we're not scary. Like we know that like this has been going on and like there's a lot of fear narratives around a lot of this, but it's just like we promise we're not trying to be scary. We're not trying to scare you. Like that's what it seems like. So it's coming through in these very like friendly, cute decks. But there's also this one and like the more traditional tarot, okay? And like I said, these tarot in specific, they have stars on the back of them. So where are we starting? Okay, we're starting with the Pantha. We are getting 3 from the Pantha. Starting there. And they're telling me not to go under the deck. But I'm already saying, like, this message is something about the type of experiences that people have had historically. Abduction, frightening, nightmare, terror. It is something about that. What is this? That's something about timelines. That's something about, they said don't go. Sorry. And interestingly though, when they said don't go under the deck, the first thing I saw was confinement. Don't go here. go here. This is either some sort of, it is either these beings who I am talking to right now, trying to say, like, we swear to freaking God, okay? We're the good beings. We're the good beings. We're not bad. We are not bad. We're like good. We're okay. We're okay. We're not bad. Or what this is, or a combination of messages, is that if these beings were associated with any, because I was getting timelines on this because this is like crossed. It's crossed. It's like a timeline. There were weird timelines going on here, weird activities. If at any point in time that these beings were interacting in like a negative way, it was due to some sort of like like I said, ignorance. Like just because something looks super advanced to you does not mean that that being has like, typically we are both mysteries to each other. Like there are stories about beings entering people's homes and like being very confused by like toasters and things like that. It's like what seems super advanced to us, it's like they're looking at us almost in the exact same way. They're like, what the hell is that, man? And so like these are either beings establishing that they are not the bad beings, or if they were behaving in ways that were non-consensual with others at the time, they are making some sort of atonement for that because they did not understand. Okay, so this is something like that. Like we apologize for this. Like, or we're just frankly the good beings, okay? And they're trying to establish better communication and contact regardless of what that curse means. So now we are going here to this cat deck, and we're getting 3 from here. Because I remember when I would get strafed in like dreams before by ships, I would be like afraid. I would be afraid. And like the experiences that I was having before I like cut off contact had like way better energy on them. Even though nothing like bad ever happened to me. But this was the first time that I like have ever been like strafed in a dream, like seen a ship and been happy about it. That is typically not my response. I'm usually very upset. Okay. No. Going under the deck. So under this merit making, the Knight of Cups, this is some sort of either it's a peace offering, the Knight of Cups, or they're just trying to be very open about the fact that like we're the goodies or whatever. Knight of Cups, two of Wands, and that they're like holding back because they are waiting on the okay from you. Like these are beings of consent. Like if you do not want them participating in your life, if you're afraid, this is also something like them allowing you to understand, at least these particular beings. Like let's say you got curious, right? Like you would like to have some form of contact experience with a non-human being. And so you opened yourself up to that. And in opening yourself up to that, you became afraid. What these beings want you to know is that that is okay. And that if you become afraid, they're not going to force any sort of continued contact with you. You just say like, I'm afraid, I'm not ready for this. I don't want this. And that's going to be the end of it. Like they're not going to try to force that on you, but they would of course be open to you trying again with them. And that's typically how like a first contact experience is going to go if we're on the good timeline, right? The mega happy timeline. This is about like, especially with something non-human, like it's got to be something that's gradual, because like something just all of a sudden it's going to create too much panic, okay? And so these beings are more like, hey, let's get to know each other. We'll make a little appearance here and there if you give us the okay. And if you're not ready, we'll back off. And then if you get like a little braver, we'll come back. And then we'll just go from there. So you can see it's like a trust building thing. And then this curse, the Emperor, under this curse. Potentially there was some sort of control going on in the darker versions of the experience in the timeline. That's super interesting. Beings might not have been like fully in control of themselves, is what I'm saying. There might have been something that was like controlling them at the time. I'm not sure, but that Emperor under the curse, I don't know. Okay, where are we going now? Okay, now this. And we're getting 3 under each of these. So merit-making, Knight of Cups. And this is something in the dream experience, predominantly. But I mean, that's going to be the case. It is still a rarity that you would be experiencing this type of stuff in like material reality or consensus reality. It's not impossible, but it tends to be more few and far between. And also it tends to be like moments. It doesn't tend to be prolonged experiences yet. All right, this Knight of Cups. Yeah, this is something about like wanting to come together. With, so the Lovers, the Empress, oh, and the Devil. What the fuck is that? Okay, we're clarifying with this. The Empress. Well, let me get one on everything. There's something about them like holding back from like coming together with people. It's like they're not going to do this. They are not going to like come together with people or come into contact with people until like the people in question, like the Empress. That's also like that. Just because that's an Empress does not mean that like men are excluded from that. It's just that the Empress is a very like powerful energy, but she is also receptive. Are you receptive to this contact? The Emperor is more representative of an acting force and not a receptive force. So that's why it's showing up as the Empress, because it's like, we are going to hold back until you are not only in this Empress energy, but also until you understand that you have power, that you have agency. We are not going to do anything until you understand that. Otherwise, this makes sense, we get this devil shit. We get like, it's about approaching this like in fear. It's like they don't want this. They don't want fear-based stuff. And like, it's probably through trial and error that they have been realizing mistakes that they have made, that maybe their own higher ups have made, and now they're trying to establish better communication and contact protocols. The Devil, the Fool, this is something about ignorance and people just kind of not knowing, because like, let's think about that. Let's go back to the First Nations, right? When people made the gift of blankets to the First Nations people, they were not thinking to themselves, you know what, we really want to create some biological warfare here. But because people were ignorant about the transfer of disease and things like that, and illness at the time, just that, like, more innocent, okay, more innocent gesture of the giving of a gift created horrible things. That wasn't the, at least for that thing, it wasn't the intention, but it destroyed people's lives. And so some of this dark timeline stuff, I guarantee you it's the same thing. It's like, oh, hey, we want to like do, and then like there's this whole big like disastrous situation. Because frankly, a non-human being doesn't know how to, like, of course we don't know how to interact with each other. So that's why potentially a lot of forgiveness is necessary here, a lot of communication, open communication, understanding. And that is why this replicates for total human liberation and first contact, us being able to do that with each other, interpersonally within our own families and friendships, and also nationally with our national history of like very horrible traumas and atrocities. Okay, that's why that work is necessary. But yes, there's like, this is some sort of like, we gave it, I'm telling you, the First Nations and the blankets, like they did not understand. But there's some sort of like both sides isms going on here. Like the beings acted in a particular way that they didn't understand. And like us, our own like humanity, also the presence of these beings, like we're like, oh, it's like a bad thing or whatever, and it's like no. And especially this Empress and with Jesus and everything else, this is very much like we come in peace, we come in abundance, like we're coming in love. We're not coming in like this conquering like emperor, this cursed emperor. We are not conquerors. We are not genocidal. We are not here to invade. That is not like, that's not the agenda. And in fact, like the only agenda that there is the coming together. And I don't know what goes from there. But this is very much like, I don't know, just trying to establish a different understanding, a different way of communicating, and a different way to bring this about. Because I just really, even though there is truth to some of the dark timeline stuff, it's like we can't like cling to that and get obsessive with it and all. That's another thing about the conspiracy, the conspiratorial stuff. That just, we need to close that out. People who are still aggressively like plugged into those sorts of timelines are in fact manifesting those timelines. And is that the timeline you really want? Because I want this timeline. This is involved with the mega happy timeline. I'm really only interested in non-human beings who are aligned with the mega happy timeline. All right, this okay and the Two of Wands. And I will tell you, at least for the beings who I am talking about, and that's another thing, there is no one person who speaks for the beings. There are other people, other experiencers who most definitely, because I've seen them on thousands, tens of thousands of people on these ships, okay? I'm not the only one. A lot of reason why people don't want to talk about it though is because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be seen as crazy or whatever, so they don't talk about it. But I'm just saying, I'm not the only one. I am not like the main representative. There are other people who will speak. So don't get super plugged into just everything that I'm saying, because we really need to be operating not in a space of getting our information from one person. It needs to be at least a group of people. So, but I would tell you, I am speaking in general about the glowing whites and beings who are connected to the glowing whites and beings who would be respecting boundaries and consent and are following the protocols that I am outlining. If it's not that, I'm not fucking with it. Especially when it comes to like this sort of alien, this sort of non-human being, because there are all different sorts, okay? And these I feel very comfortable talking about because these don't follow that naming convention. In fact, I've never gotten names from these beings, ever. And they don't operate that way. So me talking to you about these beings is not going to like bring them to you. So you're in no danger of any, it's not like the yellow transmissions or anything like that. Because that is most definitely not for everyone. So this okay and this Two of Wands. there is something about, like, this is about, because I'm saying, like, they want the okay from you. They want you to feel like, this is just a reiteration of the message. They want you to understand that you have, like, equal and in fact, like, sometimes greater power than these beings. That you are the one who has agency, power, and control here. And there's something about this magic, but it's just like your this is because I was saying, like, this is like a general or something. There is something about the way that, like, people are with these beings, that it's like you don't understand how, like, you think that we are powerful, and it's not that we don't have certain types of power or whatever, but you have power, and in fact, in some cases, more power than these beings. So that's part of, like, the thing that they, like, want you to understand, is that they are not some sort of, like, all-powerful, like, whatever forces that are just who can dominate you at, like, a moment's notice. Like, this is very weird to them. Like, that concept that, like, they would want to do that, or that they can do that, is very strange to them, because they are looking at y'all kind of similarly. They're like, what are you talking about? Y'all are the ones. Y'all are the ones that have this power. Y'all are the ones who can hurt us. So there's that. And we switch. We clarify with this deck down here. All right, this Queen of Swords. So yes, if you are dealing with some sort of beings that aren't acknowledging your power and sovereignty, that they aren't meeting you as some type of, like, equal, it's not the being for you. And also the beings who do tend to be, like, more powerful, they don't, like, there's, like, really strict boundaries with that. Like, beings who, like, could potentially do something to you if they really wanted to, they, first of all, aren't. Like, if they feel like that's even, like, something that could potentially happen, they just won't appear to you. They will not make contact, because they don't want, like, there's just something about, like, we're not even doing that. Like, that's not even, like, part of the thing that we are wanting to involve ourselves with. So if they even get a hint of that from somebody, they're just going to be like, okay, that person's not ready for this particular table. We're just going to leave them to sort that out. And then when they are ready to come and sit at this particular table, of course the table is open to them. But we can't have them doing this, because it's just, we can't deal with that. Like, we can't deal with that. We can't invite that in. Judgment. Yes, they want you to know. They want you to know of your own power. Strength, Chariot, that you are very powerful. I think we're just, this magic, the Magician, is the one that I'm most curious about. King of Cups. This is striking me as something, like, actually magical. Like, pertaining to like the occult, channeling, like actual magic. This is striking me more as a method of communication. If you want to open communication, there are particular methods. Like, if you are aware of these things first and you want to open channels of communication or contact that is available and open to you, and they're kind of describing it. And it has to do with, here's our Emperor. Who is this? Because sometimes in this deck in particular, the Magician card does have kind of a malevolent edge to it, and I'm getting this Emperor again. And I'm just like, we have this Emperor, like, under this curse. This is someone, whoever that Emperor is, like, to these beings, like, I'm registering it as a very powerful magician who did something. Like, they did something, like, themselves or through these beings that, like, somehow contributed to, like, negative timeline shit. And I don't know if this is like a reformed person, like they were actually more negative. Like I'm hearing this, like whoever that emperor is, like they were more negative in the past because like they were like hostile towards like humans, or if that's representative of a collective of certain beings, like they were actually hostile towards people, but they were wrong about something. Like they were like doing like bad magic, whatever that means to a non-human being. And this emperor, the reason why I'm saying this is this Knight of Cups here, it's sort of like, I'm sorry, like, well, this is under the deck, but I'm saying we're leaving, like we don't, like, I'm sorry for this. But this is also about like methods of communication. Yes, death, we are changing this. Like this is over. Whatever this is over, it is done. We are not operating like in this way anymore. And this is also, this would be like, this emperor is representative of like a faction of leaders or one leader in general. This is that leader taking accountability for whatever went on. It's like, please don't blame these beings. They were operating under my direction and I was wrong. Like this is my fault because I was the one in control here. It's something like that. But this is also about like contacting beings through methods of magic, meditation, trance channeling, the occult, and typically things like that. Like typically, like I wouldn't suggest like talking boards for communication with these sorts of beings, because like things like talking boards and the Estes method at this point, you get a lot of bum ass beings. Like it's just like there's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of garbage, like until you have a connection with a particular like being in general that you've like vetted, or particular groups of beings that you vetted, you really don't want to like go that way. Not because it's super dangerous, but because it's just a lot of stupid shit that comes through talking boards and the Estes method and stuff like that. You want to have a little bit of structure on that, which is what the occult and structured magic and things like high magic is very good for. That form of magic, while it's very denounced like elsewhere and people are scared of it, provides a very solid safety structure for you and very structured methods of getting rid of things that you don't want to deal with. Okay, because some, like if you're just randomly opening yourself up as a trance channel with no like boundaries or structure around you, that can get you messed up, especially if something's coming through your own body. Okay, you don't want to open that up to just any being out here, all right? So that is what we have over here. This is also why they're hanging back. Why they hang back and they don't, because like whatever mistakes have been made here, these beings are kind of like, okay, like we need to like because we fucked this up, but like blah blah blah, like what are we gonna do about it? Because now they think we're freaking evil, like all around, and like look at all this, and we can't really blame them because look at what we did. Okay, so I mean, they're taking accountability, especially this leader here. So let's see this curse and this emperor. The Hierophant. Like I'm saying, this is like somebody in charge, or a group or a faction of beings who is in charge. Somebody who is giving like directives and things like that. Chaos. There is some sort of conflict here. Whatever this person or this being or group of beings did that was in charge, it was incorrect. And they're looking to like get rid of this Five of Wands. They want to change the Five of Wands into the Six of Wands, Three of Pentacles, as in like, we know we came to you this way, okay? Because of me, we came to you this way, and now we want to change that. We want to come, like, we want you to be happy about, like, we want you to like be happy about our appearance. We want to actually work with you in some way. We don't want you to feel like we are these like totalitarian, like, because this is giving me very, like the worst parts of like the Catholic Church. Like, we don't want you to feel like we are here to create trouble for you, even though that is the experience that you have had of us in the past. It's not the experience that we want going forward. Okay, so I'm going to get some more information here, and then I'm going to close this part of the read. This is not the end of the read. It's just that we had a lot of information to get through preliminarily, pretty sure. But there's like a second layer to whatever's going on this Knight of Cups, Two of Wands, Emperor that I will do in the second part of this. No, this is, we clarify over here. So this Hierophant, Emperor. Yes, this is the person who was like in charge of other beings. And they're also the ones wanting to say like, hey, we want to like create some sort of like actual foundation. I know it was like this Three of Swords, like there's trauma that happened here. Like your experience of the beings potentially was not a good one. Because even though I never had like horrific things happen to me, like my experience of that wasn't pleasant, I promise you. Yes, so they have learned this Five of Wands, they like looked at that and went, oh, this isn't like, no. So they are reviewing the tapes and being accountable. And then this Six of Wands. Yes, this is we want to come to you like this way. We want to, like, this is just about establishing better relationships. That's all this is, for the most part, that I can see right now. It's sort of like coming to you with like, it's like a true thing, but also with the sword up and like, it's not exactly a we come in peace message, but it's just like, we want to have like a better relationship here. We want to have a better dialogue. We don't like what we've been creating with you. Because obviously we are co-creating with the beings. Yeah, and there's sort of like this Nine of Wands on this like Three of Pentacles is just sort of this acknowledgement is like, we know, like this is jacked. Like we've been jacked so far. We would like to be not so jacked in the future. Yeah, Queen of Wands. This is about authority and power again. It's also weirdly, I told you the cats, like there's something about cats with this. The willingness to try again. Like I know that we're kind of all mutually in the Nine of Wands with this, but can we try, like we're willing to try again if you are willing to try again. Try again. We'll try again. And if we need to back off again, then we'll back off again. Yeah, look at that. We want to come together this way. Like this is the intention. Celebration, harmony, mutual exchange, a mutual acknowledgement of like how powerful we are and working together in that. Okay. I'm going to stop this read here because we're getting ready to extend over the hour. However, this is not the end of the read. There will be a part 2 that I will start filming immediately after this because I don't want to take a break on this energy. I just want to close it out. So, my traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies. I am your GM, your eternal game master for this, the game of life. And I am, of course, the greatest magician of the age, perhaps the greatest magician of all time. And together, you and I will perform the greatest magic trick of all time. We will reverse the polarities of the world, make America great for once, fly this boat to the moon somehow, shift our world onto the mega happy timeline, leaving it a much better place than it perhaps ever was before, because we are my traumatized babies and mentally ill Barbies, crawling on the planet's face, some insects called the human race, lost in time and lost in space and meaning.